My grandson, Kevin, patted my knee and said the 6 words that changed everything. "Grandma," he said, his small voice clear above the hum of the football game on the television. "Mom said your money goes to us now." He didn't look up from the small blue car he was rolling back and forth across the worn patch of carpet by my armchair. To him, it was just a fact, like the sky being blue or the turkey in the oven smelling like Thanksgiving. I felt my husband, Robert, shift in his portrait on the mantelpiece, his painted eyes seeming to find mine. I smiled at my grandson, a slow, careful movement of my mouth that felt disconnected from the rest of my body. It was the kind of smile you use to reassure a child you have heard them, even when their words have just dropped a stone into the quiet pond of your life. "Is that so, sweet boy?" I asked, my voice coming out smoother than I expected. "Well, that's nice." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his cars, making a soft vrooming sound. Across the living room, my daughter Marlene laughed at something her husband David said. She was glowing, her face flushed from the heat of the kitchen and the pleasure of a house full of family. She hadn't heard. No one had. It was a secret spoken just between a 7-year-old boy and his grandmother, a secret I hadn't even known we were keeping. The stones sank deeper, and the ripples began to spread. That was the start of it. But to understand the weight of those 6 words, you have to understand the quiet rhythm of the life they disrupted. My house on the east side is a simple brick bungalow, but it holds the entire map of my life. Robert and I bought it the year Marlene was born. Every scratch on the hardwood floors, every faded patch on the floral wallpaper is a memory. After Robert passed from a heart attack that came on as suddenly as a summer storm, the house grew quieter, but its rhythm remained. The furnace clicking on in the winter, the hum of the window unit in the summer, the sound of my sewing machine stitching new life into old fabric. For 5 years after Marlene had Kevin, my rhythm included the pitter-patter of his small feet. Marlene was working 2 jobs, trying to get her career in marketing off the ground, and David was driving for a rideshare company, his hours unpredictable. It made sense for Kevin to stay with me during the week. I didn't mind. That boy brought a light back into the house that I thought had gone out with Robert. We had our routines: oatmeal with brown sugar in the morning, trips to the Palmer Park splash pad in the summer, reading stories in the big armchair before his mother came to pick him up, her face etched with a weariness that I knew all too well. About a year ago, she and David had finally saved enough for a down payment on a small house in Southfield. It was a big step, one I was immensely proud of. My little girl, a homeowner. But the pride was mixed with a new kind of quiet in my own home. The silence where a child's laughter used to be is a specific kind of heavy. It was a few months after they moved that Marlene started talking about my finances. She'd come over on a Sunday, a container of my leftover pot roast in her hands, and would watch me at the kitchen table, sorting through my bills. I had a system Robert and I had used for 40 years. A simple ledger book where I wrote down every penny that came in and every penny that went out. My pension from the garment factory, Robert's Social Security, the utility bills, the grocery receipts. It was all there in my neat, careful cursive. "Mom, you shouldn't have to worry about all that paper," she said one afternoon, gesturing at my ledger with a perfectly manicured hand. "It's 2023. Everything is online now. It's so much easier." I just smiled. "This way works for me, honey. I like to see it all in one place." "But it's a burden," she insisted. Her voice was full of a daughter's earnest concern. "What if you miss a payment? What if you lose something? David and I were talking. We could set you up with a joint account. I could help you manage everything, pay your bills online for you, just to take the weight off." A cold thread of unease stitched itself into my chest. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her clothes were always immaculate, her hair professionally styled, She drove a new SUV, the kind with a screen as big as a small television. I knew what she made, and I knew what things cost. The numbers didn't quite add up in my head, but I pushed the thought away. A mother isn't supposed to audit her own child's life. Marlene, I'm perfectly capable of paying my own bills, I said, my voice gentle but firm. I've been doing it for a very long time. I know you are, Mom. Of course you are, she said, her tone softening, becoming placating. It's not about capability. It's about making your life easier. You've done so much for us, for Kevin. Let me do this for you. Please? It would give me such peace of mind. Grief makes people very easy to persuade. So does love. The thought of giving her peace of mind, of accepting the care she was offering, was a powerful lure. I was tired. The house felt empty. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to let someone else carry a little of the weight. I hesitated. I don't know, baby. A joint account. That seems like a big step. It's just a name on a piece of paper, she said, her smile bright and reassuring. Nothing would change, really. I'd just be able to see when the light bill is due and pay it from my phone. You wouldn't have to do a thing. Think of it. No more writing checks. No more trips to the post office. She made it sound so simple, so logical. A small concession to modern times. A way for my daughter to feel useful. I thought about the 5 years she had given me with my grandson. I thought about her tired eyes after a 12-hour shift. Maybe this was my turn to give back, to ease her worry. So I agreed. The next week, she brought over a stack of papers from the bank. She sat beside me at the kitchen table, the scent of her expensive perfume filling the air, and pointed to each line where I needed to sign. My reading glasses were smudged, and the print was impossibly small. This just adds me to your checking, Mom, she explained, tapping a perfectly polished nail on a signature line. And this just lets the bank know it's okay for me to help with things. Standard procedure. I trusted her. A daughter is not a stranger with a contract. She is your blood. Her interests are your interests. I signed where she pointed, my hand moving across the smooth official paper. She folded the documents neatly, tucked them into her leather handbag, and kissed me on the cheek. Thank you, Mom, she said, her voice thick with what I thought was gratitude. You won't have to worry about a thing anymore. And for a while I didn't. The bills got paid. Marlene would call and tell me she'd handled the DTE bill or the water payment. It did feel easier. I still kept my ledger, out of habit more than anything, but the entries were simpler. I'd just jot down what Marlene told me she'd paid. The balance in my checkbook seemed to stay steady enough. I had my discretionary cash from the ATM for groceries at a small market down the street, for my tithe at church, for the occasional trip to the fabric store. Life continued in its quiet rhythm. Until Thanksgiving. Until 6 words from a child who had no idea what he was saying. After Marlene and David packed up the leftovers and a sleepy Kevin, the house fell into its familiar silence. The dishwasher hummed in the kitchen, a counterpoint to the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The air still smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon. I sat in my armchair, the television off, and let Kevin's words echo in the quiet. Your money goes to us now. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. A thing he had been told. A thing he believed. Why would Marlene say that to her son? Maybe it was a simple misunderstanding, a clumsy way of explaining to a child that Grandma was helping them out, or that she was helping Grandma. But it felt wrong. It felt proprietary. I pushed myself out of the chair, my joints protesting the long day. I went to the small wooden desk in the corner of the dining room where I kept my things. I pulled out the checkbook and the ledger, and then I went to the hall closet, to the metal lockbox where I kept important papers. I found the last 6 bank statements the credit union had mailed before Marlene had switched us to paperless to save the trees. I spread them out on the dining room table, the polished wood reflecting the soft light from the lamp. I started with the statement from before the joint account. My pension deposit from the factory, clear as day on the first of every month, $2,845. Robert's survivor benefits on the third Wednesday, $1,672. A total of $4,517. Every month, predictable as the sunrise. My expenses were just as predictable. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, food. I always had a comfortable cushion, not rich, but secure. Robert had made sure of that. Then I looked at the statements from after Marlene's name was added. The first couple of months looked normal. The deposits were there. The withdrawals for the bills she said she was paying were there. But then, on the third statement, I saw it. A line item I didn't recognize. Online transfer to M. Brooks. The amount was small, $300. I frowned. Maybe she needed a short-term loan and was too proud to ask. She would have paid it back. I flipped to the next month's statement. Another transfer, this time $500. And the month after that, another for $500. My chest tightened. These were not loans she had mentioned. These were just withdrawals. My money, leaving my account, going to hers, quietly. No discussion. No permission asked. The final statement I had from 5 months ago was the one that made the air leave my lungs. The pension deposit was simply gone. The survivor benefit was there, but my own hard-earned pension, the money I had earned over 40 years of stitching sleeves and collars, had vanished. In its place was a smaller, recurring deposit from a different source, labeled only as Direct Deposit, ACH. I didn't understand. I looked at the withdrawals. They were larger now. Weekly transfers to Marlene's account. $1,000 here, $1,500 there. My hands began to tremble. I sat back in the chair, the smooth, cool wood a stark contrast to the heat rising in my face. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. This was deliberate. The room felt suddenly smaller, the walls closing in. She had not been helping me. She had been helping herself. The thought was so monstrous, so unnatural, that my mind refused to hold it for more than a second at a time. This was Marlene, my baby, the girl I had taught to ride a bike and braid her own hair. But the numbers on the page did not lie. They did not have feelings. They did not care about love or trust. They were cold, hard facts, and the facts were telling me a story I did not want to read. Sleep did not come that night. I lay in bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, the bank statements laid out on the nightstand beside me. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Kevin's voice, so innocent and trusting. Your money goes to us now. He wasn't just repeating a line. He was telling me the new reality, a reality that had been constructed behind my back, using my love as the foundation. The next morning, I knew I couldn't face this alone. My pride screamed at me to keep it inside the family, to handle it with Marlene directly. But my instincts, honed by 67 years of life, told me I was out of my depth. This wasn't just a family squabble over a few borrowed dollars. The missing pension check was something else entirely. It was bigger, more official, more dangerous. My neighbor, Samuel Henderson, had been an accountant for General Motors for 35 years. He was a widower like me, a quiet man who spent his days tending his prize-winning roses. He was meticulous and discreet. After my morning coffee, I gathered the statements, put them in a manila envelope, and walked the 30 feet across our shared lawn to his front door. He opened it with a warm smile, but it faded when he saw my face. Evelyn, is everything all right? Samuel, I hope I'm not disturbing you, I began, my voice a little unsteady. I I have a financial question. I was hoping you might look at something for me. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Of course, of course. Come in, he said, ushering me into his tidy living room. It smelled of lemon polish and old books. He led me to his dining table, and I laid the statements out, just as I had on my own table the night before. I just need another set of eyes, I said, trying to keep my tone casual. I'm having trouble making sense of the last few months. He put on a pair of reading glasses that hung from a cord around his neck and bent over the papers. He was silent for a long time. The only sound was the rustle of paper as he moved from one statement to the next. He took a small notepad and a pen from his shirt pocket and began to jot down figures. He tapped the pen on the line item for the first online transfer. This one, Evelyn, he said quietly, not looking at me. $300 to Mr. Brooks. That's your Marlene, I assume. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Yes. Did you authorize this transfer? No, I whispered. I didn't even know about it until last night. He made a note. He continued on, his brow furrowed in concentration. When he got to the last statement, the one where my pension was missing, he stopped. He read the page twice, then a third time. He took his glasses off and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Well, he said, his voice gentle, there are two issues here. The first is these unauthorized transfers. They start small and they grow. That's a classic pattern, I'm afraid. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The second issue is more serious. Your pension deposit from the factory has stopped. It's been replaced by a different, smaller deposit from another source. Do you know what this is? I shook my head, feeling a wave of dizziness. No, Marlene handles the online things. She said she was making it all more efficient. I see, he said. His voice was grim. Evelyn, what I think has happened. I think your daughter has redirected your pension. The main deposit is likely going into an account that you can't see. This smaller deposit, this is probably just enough to keep the balance from looking too low at a quick glance, to keep you from getting suspicious. He looked at me, his eyes full of a sad kindness. This isn't a mistake. This is a deliberate, structured diversion of your funds. The word hung in the air between us. Diversion. It sounded so much more clinical and sterile than what it felt like. It felt like theft. A betrayal so profound it had no name. What do I do, Samuel? I asked, my voice barely audible. First thing tomorrow morning, you go to your credit union. Not the teller at the front. You ask to speak to the branch manager or someone in compliance. You take these statements with you. You don't call Marlene. You don't confront her. Not yet. First, you get the facts, and you protect yourself. He reached across the table and patted my hand. His touch was warm and steady. You are a strong woman, Evelyn Brooks. You'll get through this. I walked back to my house, feeling like the ground beneath my feet was no longer solid. Samuel's words echoed in my mind. Protect yourself. It was a strange concept. I had spent my entire life protecting others, protecting my husband from worry, protecting my daughter from the world's sharp edges, protecting my grandson from scraped knees and bad dreams. The idea of needing to protect myself from my own daughter was a landscape I had no map for. The next morning, I dressed with unusual care. I chose a navy blue dress, the one I wore to church, and my good coat. I needed to feel composed, even if my insides were a chaotic storm. The credit union was a modern building of glass and steel, cold and impersonal. The air inside was still and smelled of recycled air and clean money. As Samuel had instructed, I walked past the line of tellers and asked the woman at the reception desk to see the branch manager. I was shown to a small glass-walled office where a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a kind smile stood to greet me. Her nameplate read, Cynthia Turner, Compliance Officer. Mrs. Brooks, she said, shaking my hand, please have a seat. How can I help you today? I sat, my handbag clutched in my lap. I took a deep breath. I have some concerns about my checking account, I began. I laid out the statements on her polished desk. My daughter is on the account with me. She helps me with my bills. Ms. Turner listened patiently as I explained the situation, my voice low and steady. I told her about the transfers I hadn't authorized. I told her about my missing pension deposit. She nodded, her expression serious and unreadable. She turned to her computer, and her fingers flew across the keyboard. Let's have a look, she said. Okay, I see the account here. Evelyn and Marlene Brooks. Joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. She clicked a few more times. And yes, I see the transfers you're talking about. They were all initiated online from an IP address that's been used for all the account activity for the past 8 months. She looked at me. That would be your daughter's computer, I presume. I nodded again, feeling a fresh wave of sickness. All right, she continued, her voice all business. Now, about the direct deposit. More clicking. A frown creased her forehead. Ah, I see. Mrs. Brooks, about 9 months ago, a form was submitted to your former employer's pension administrator. It was a standard direct deposit authorization form. It redirected your monthly pension payment from this joint account to a new one. My heart hammered against my ribs. A new one? What new one? An online savings account, she said, her eyes meeting mine. The account is solely in your daughter's name. There it was, the final brutal truth. It wasn't just siphoning money from a shared account. She had cut me off from the source. She had taken my entire pension, the bedrock of my financial security, and moved it into her own private keeping. The room was silent for a moment. I could hear the faint whir of her computer, the distant sound of a phone ringing. And suddenly, I understood something. I saw Marlene at my kitchen table, her smile so bright, her perfume so sweet, tapping her polished nail on the paper. This just lets the bank know it's okay for me to help with things. Standard procedure. I had signed it. I had signed away my own money, believing it was an act of love. My trust had been the only tool she needed. A chilling thought surfaced, a sentence I felt more than heard, as if it were Marlene's own internal whisper. She won't check where it's being sent. She trusts me. Ms. Turner seemed to sense the shift in me. Her professional demeanor softened. Mrs. Brooks, she said gently, this is a serious matter. It's a form of elder financial abuse. The phrase landed with a dull thud. Abuse. It wasn't a word I had ever associated with my family, with my daughter. Abuse was something that happened to other people in other houses. Not here. Not to me. What can I do? I asked, my voice thin. Well, we have a few options, she said, her efficiency a comfort in the swirling chaos of my emotions. First, we need to protect what's left. I can help you open a new account today, in your name only. We can then go through the process of redirecting your Social Security benefits to that new account. That will be secure immediately. The pension is trickier. You will have to contact the administrator and report that the change of deposit was unauthorized. You'll likely need to file a report. It can be a long process. She paused. And we need to close this joint account. As a joint owner, your daughter has the legal right to withdraw funds at any time. We need to move your remaining balance to the new account before she can take any more. She looked at me with deep sympathy. This will likely mean she becomes aware that you know what's been happening. Are you prepared for that? I thought of Marlene's face on Thanksgiving, so happy and carefree. I thought of my grandson, playing with his cars, blissfully unaware. Was I prepared? No, but I saw no other path forward. The ground had shifted, and I had to find my footing again, even if it meant standing alone. Yes, I said, and the word felt like the heaviest thing I had ever lifted. Let's do it. For the next hour, Ms. Turner worked with meticulous efficiency. She set up my new account. She helped me fill out the forms to have my survivor benefits rerouted. She printed out the transaction history from the joint account, a thick stack of pages that documented every single dollar Marlene had taken. It totaled over $14,000 in less than a year. She also printed a copy of the direct deposit change request. My signature was at the bottom, shaky but clear. As she was finishing, she looked at a calendar on her desk. Mrs. Brooks, I see that your husband's benefit reassessment is coming up, the annual review. The paperwork is due in 12 days. Yes, I know, I said. Marlene was going to help me with it. A look of alarm crossed Miss Turner's face. You cannot let her do that, she said, her voice firm. These assessments often involve confirming bank details for deposit. If she has control of that paperwork, she could try to redirect your survivor benefits as well. The coldness spread from my chest to my fingertips. Apparently, ambition works both ways. The scale of her deception was breathtaking. It wasn't just about skimming. It was about a total financial takeover, executed under the guise of daughterly care. I left the bank with a new empty checkbook in my purse and a folder thick with evidence of my daughter's betrayal. The sun was bright, but the world looked gray and washed out. I walked home, my steps slow and heavy. Every passing car, every laughing group of teenagers seemed to belong to a different world, one where daughters didn't systematically drain their mother's life savings. That evening, I sat at my dining room table and spread the papers out once more. The transaction history was a brutal narrative. Money transferred for car payment, for credit card bill, for vacation deposit. My money, my security. Used to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford, a life she presented to the world as a success. The anger I expected to feel didn't come. In its place was a profound and hollow sadness. I had not just lost money. I had lost the story I told myself about my family, about my daughter. The foundation of my world had cracked, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. I spent the next few days in a fog of quiet activity. I called the pension office and started the long, arduous process of reporting the fraud. I gathered my tax documents and financial records for the survivor benefit reassessment, handling the familiar paperwork with a new, sharp-edged focus. I did not call Marlene, and she did not call me. Perhaps she saw the funds being moved from the joint account before it was closed. Perhaps she was waiting, wondering. The silence stretched for a week. Then, on the Sunday after Thanksgiving, my doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Marlene stood on my porch, holding a Tupperware container. It was her peace offering, her way of testing the waters. My pot roast returned to its source. I opened the door. "Hi, Mom," she said, her smile a little too bright, a little too tight at the corners. "Just wanted to drop this off, and I brought you some of that pound cake from the bakery you like." "Hello, Marlene," I said. My voice was even. I did not invite her in. She seemed to notice the coolness for the first time. Her smile faltered. "Is everything okay?" I tried to pay the electric bill online from the joint account, and it said it was closed. I called the bank, and they were so weird about it. "Did you change something?" I looked at her, my daughter. The face I knew as well as my own. But there was a stranger looking back at me now, a person capable of a level of deceit I couldn't fathom. "We should talk," I said, finally stepping back to let her in. She walked into the living room, placing the container and the cake box on the coffee table. She turned to face me, her arms crossed over her chest, a defensive posture. "What's going on, Mom? You're acting strange." I didn't ask her to sit. I remained standing. "I went to the bank, Marlene." A flicker of something, fear, maybe, passed through her eyes, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a look of manufactured concern. "The bank? Why? Is something wrong?" "I wanted to understand some of the transactions on my account," I said, my voice quiet, but carrying the weight of the last week. "The online transfers, for example." Her expression hardened. She dropped the pretense of innocence. "Oh, that," she said, with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Mom, I needed a little help. You know how expensive things are. It was just a loan. I was going to pay it all back." "A loan is something you ask for, Marlene," I replied, my composure a thin sheet of ice over a raging sea. "You didn't ask. You just took it." "I was embarrassed," she shot back, her voice rising. "I didn't want you to worry. David's hours got cut, and Kevin's school tuition went up. It was just a temporary thing to get us through." Was redirecting my entire pension a temporary thing, too? The question landed in the space between us with the force of a physical blow. The color drained from her face. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. For the first time, she looked truly cornered. The mask of the caring daughter had not just slipped, it had shattered. How did you know about that?" she stammered. "Ms. Turner at the credit union was very helpful. She showed me the form. She showed me the new account you opened. In your name only." I held her gaze. "The account where my pension has been going for the last 5 months." She sank onto the sofa, as if her legs could no longer hold her. She put her head in her hands. She didn't cry. There were no tears. There was only the raw, ugly sight of her deception being laid bare. "I was going to tell you," she mumbled into her palms. "I was just trying to get ahead of the debt. Just for a little while. I was going to put it all back." "Were you?" I asked, the question genuine. I truly did not know the answer. I did not know the person sitting on my sofa. "Were you going to put it back before or after you tried to redirect Robert's survivor benefits? Ms. Turner warned me about the reassessment paperwork. She said I shouldn't let you help me with it." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a fresh panic. She had been caught not just in the act, but in the intention. "It wasn't like that," she insisted, her voice pleading now. "I'm drowning, Mom. You have no idea. The mortgage, the car payments, the credit cards. We're so far under. I needed a lifeline. You're comfortable. You have the house. You have your savings. I thought you wouldn't even miss it." "You wouldn't even miss it." The words were more painful than the theft itself. To be so disregarded. To have my life's work, my security, my peace of mind, dismissed as a rounding error in her own desperate calculations. "Whether I would miss it is not the point, Marlene," I said, and my voice was colder than I had ever heard it. "The point is that it is mine. Robert and I worked our entire lives for that security. Not so you could buy a bigger car or go on vacation. We worked for peace of mind, and you took that from me. You used my love for you and my trust in you, and you stole from me." Silence descended on the room again. It was a thick, suffocating thing. I could see the whole sorry picture now. The pressure she was under, the desire to keep up appearances, the easy lie she told herself that she was just borrowing, that she was entitled to it. I understood the human frailty behind it, but understanding is not the same as forgiveness. What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice small. I looked at the portrait of Robert on the mantel. He had always been the practical one, the one who saw the world in clear lines of right and wrong. I knew what he would say. The joint account is closed, I stated, listing the facts as if they were inventory. My Social Security has been moved to a new account that only I can access. I have filed a fraud claim with the pension board to have my deposits restored and redirected. They advised me to file a police report. She flinched, a visceral reaction. Mom, no, please, you can't. It would ruin me. It would ruin David, Kevin. And what you did hasn't ruined me. The question was quiet, but it filled the room. You have put me in a position where I have to choose between my financial survival and my own daughter. What kind of choice is that? I let the weight of it sit with her. I saw the calculation in her eyes, the frantic search for an escape route. There wasn't one. I'm not going to file a police report, I said finally, and I saw the flicker of relief wash over her. You are my daughter, and Kevin is my grandson. I will not be the reason his mother goes to jail. Her shoulders slumped, but I was not finished. However, this is what will happen. You will sign a legal document, drawn up by a lawyer, acknowledging the $14,000 you took from my account as a debt. You will create a payment plan, and you will pay me back every single cent. I don't care if it takes you 10 years. You will make it right. She looked at me, her expression a mixture of shame and resentment. And the pension? The pension is between me and the administrators. That is my money. You will not see another dollar of it. I stood there, looking at the woman I had raised, and I felt a grief that was deeper than the one I had felt when I buried my husband. This was a different kind of death. It was the death of trust, the death of an idea I had held about who we were to each other. She stood up slowly. She didn't look at me. She walked to the door, her movements stiff and small. She opened it, then paused on the threshold. I am sorry, Mom, she said, her back still to me. I know you are, Marlene, I said, and it was the truth. I know you're sorry you got caught. She flinched as if I'd struck her, and then she was gone, pulling the door closed behind her with a quiet click. I was alone again in my house, with the smell of a bakery pound cake I would never eat. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork and quiet resolve. I met with a lawyer, a sharp woman Mr. Henderson recommended. She drew up the repayment agreement. Marlene signed it without a word, returning it via courier. I regained control of my pension. The benefit reassessment was filed, correctly and on time. On paper, my life was put back in order. The columns in my new ledger were neat and tidy once more. But the rhythm of my life had changed. The silence in the house was heavier. The memories held within the walls now included this new sharp-edged one. There is a wound that is left when trust is broken by someone you love. It doesn't bleed. It's a clean, deep cut that changes the landscape of your heart forever. I still see Kevin. Marlene drops him off on Saturday afternoons, a brief, sterile exchange at the doorway. We don't talk about what happened. We talk about the weather, about his school. Her eyes never quite meet mine. She has the look of someone who is permanently holding her breath. With Kevin, nothing has changed. We bake cookies. We read stories in the big armchair. He is the innocent party in all of this, a bright, shining light. I will never let the darkness of his mother's choices touch him if I can help it. Sometimes, when he's playing on the floor with his cars, I watch him, and I think about that Thanksgiving day. I think about how the truth can come from the most unexpected places, how a child's simple recitation of a fact can unravel a web of carefully constructed lies. He didn't save me, not really. The numbers on the page saved me. My own meticulous nature saved me. But he was the spark. He was the one who handed me the thread, and all I had to do was pull. I have my independence. I have my home. I am secure. I survived. But there is a cost to this kind of survival, a quiet ache that settles in my chest late at night. It's the price of knowing that the person you would have trusted with your life could not be trusted with your money. And it's the lonely, bitter peace of knowing you were strong enough to protect yourself when you finally had to. The foundation is no longer cracked, but I repaired it myself, and I am keenly aware of every hairline fracture that remains.